Family, let's make it hot. Let's make it do what it do. I'm here to chop it up with the family, you know what I'm saying? I just got off of work. It is October the 21st, 2017. This is a Saturday. It's about to rain, so I got off early and I decided to do this video for you guys. It's actually, this video is the first in a video series called New Orleans Exposed. I decided to do this video because a lot of tourists who buy my work have literally no clue how New Orleans works. So I want to do the video from the standpoint of me talking to somebody who's never been to New Orleans but wants to move here. So if you hear the video or you're watching it, you want to, if you get an idea why I'm talking the way I'm talking, that's because I'm doing it that way. New Orleans is the biggest city in the state of Louisiana, next to Baton Rouge, and it's weird because New Orleans has like a slight civil war with Baton Rouge. I don't know why. It just functions. It seems to work that way. You have New Orleans, which is basically a blue city in a completely red state. To give you an idea of the political climate, social climate of the city. A lot of people, and we also have the biggest native-born population here, meaning a lot of folks who live in New Orleans who was born here is more than likely gonna die here because they just don't ever leave the city, and that's not a good or bad thing. Sometimes home is home. There's no place like home. So I want to touch on that aspect first. New Orleans is a big city, but it's surrounded by a bunch of other suburbs and municipalities. You have Metairie, where I live at, which is basically, if I drive Earhart Expressway, it's probably a 10-minute drive or 15-minute drive if it's like 6 o'clock in the morning when the highway is empty. The North Shore, which is considered like Mandeville, Slidell, Covington. Then you have the West Bank, which is Marrero, anything, West Wego, you can be Algiers. Now, Algiers is actually a part of Orleans Parish. We say parish and not county because under Napoleonic law, I think that's why they pronounce it. We're the only state that pronounce the word, they use the word parish as opposed to county. You're referring to, the, I guess like the counties for each city, or the county where each city resides. Anyway, then you have Kenner, Harahan, and all those are suburbs of Jefferson County, where I live at. Now, being that it's a big city, New Orleans is also a small city. Everybody knows everybody, even if it's as big as it is, with a population of 320,000 people. Before Katrina, it had a population of over 450,000, I think. Now, everybody knows everybody in the city of New Orleans, and that is kind of a good or a bad thing, depending on what kind of lifestyle you live or whatever. And that is because people down here speak to each other. We are a very talkative city. We have a big talk radio market here. Now, what I mean by that is because if you come from up north, let's say like in New York, you might get shot, and they'll walk right over you before they say, "Oh my God, there's a guy on the ground dying here." Now, New Orleans, everybody says good afternoon, good morning, how your mom and them. We even have like certain phrases that's more or less slang, but it's kind of like how you say how you might use the term same difference. You might say, instead of saying buying groceries, we say making groceries. Okay, a lot of misconception about the city is the murder rate. Yes, there's crime here, but there's crime everywhere. A lot of the crime in New Orleans is 90% of it is crimes of passion. As far as the murder, it's this uncle, baby daddy, brother got somebody upset and they killed each other. So it's almost rare that you will have just a random person getting shot for no reason. It's always somebody knew each other, or it's the cousin of a brother, or the aunt, or the baby daddy, or the uncle of somebody to that effect. And most of it's actually social media driven. And that's the weird thing about how New Orleans functions. So also, I want to address the idea of music. Music is good. It's one of the things that make the city, that draws the tourists here, but it's not the one thing that the city has to offer. Gumbo is another thing. People who live here, you don't eat gumbo every day. Gumbo is a very unhealthy dish served for us. Like in my own personal family, we might do gumbo during Thanksgiving or when it's cold outside. But doing gumbo like in the summertime, no, that's a no-no. I would say that's almost, I can equate that to, I guess, Philly cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Not everybody can do gumbo right. Trust me on that. I've seen gumbo with hot dog weenies in it. But there's gumbo whether you got like chicken and sausage gumbo, seafood gumbo, or just okra gumbo. Now, I had to write a list. We have also traffic. Traffic, if you're coming to move here, not a good thing, a really, really good thing about New Orleans and the surrounding areas is that there's a really big network of public transportation. So even if you're coming to New Orleans to start a life, the public transportation is so well connected that you can transfer from Metairie with a bus transfer and get to the French Quarter within an hour. Or you can do Uber. We do have Uber here in New Orleans. Also, the commute. You also notice a lot of people who actually work in New Orleans live in these outside areas like Metairie, North Shore. North Shore, you watched the Causeway Bridge is packed in the morning time coming into Metairie, and it's packed going back home. Now, the good thing about New Orleans, and this is one of the best things I love about the city, is that everything is so close. It ain't like Atlanta, Georgia, where you got to get on the Beltway and go 35 minutes or 45 minutes out your way to buy groceries. New Orleans, you have basically when Dixie's everywhere, you have Rouse's everywhere, and all these little different mom and pop corner stores. So a lot of stuff is actually within walking distance, and that's a good thing because the city is so big, it is also small. It's small compared to other large cities. Now, I'm going to get into what we're looking at economy next. Okay, the economy of New Orleans is for the city is tourism. So you have a big issue with hotels. There's almost too many hotels. Some hotels can't even do a full occupancy because there's so many of them. We also have this thing with Airbnb, and that's a whole different story. Short-term rentals. Now, I want to address the idea of tourism. We have a big maritime industry in New Orleans where a lot of the Mississippi River, because of the river, you have a lot of barges and a lot of tugboat companies, but tugboats are only reserved for a few people, but there's still maritime jobs as far as you working in the Gulf. And we have an oil industry here, we have oil refineries here, but it's always been an argument of concern for most of the political leaders here to make the industry more than tourism because you have dry seasons. Every tourism city has the dry spell. Mainly for us, it's the summertime. The summertime in New Orleans is almost dead, but you also have kids out of school. So with that being said, if you come to New Orleans, come here with a job already waiting on you. Don't just show up and pray to God that you have a job or that you can get a job. You should actually get a job based on the quality of life that you're already used to. So that way that job can maintain the quality of life that you're used to. If you used to a minimum wage lifestyle, so to speak, knock yourself out. But you'll come here looking for a job and end up working 3 jobs just to maintain whatever standard of life that you was used to before you moved here. Now, as far as the crime and the police is concerned, I'm going to say New Orleans Police Department has had issues before the hurricane. Before Katrina, New Orleans had its attrition issues, the police department, I mean. But a lot of cops lost their houses, lost their families. Some cops relocated to whole different other states. So New Orleans Police Department lost a significant amount of police. Also, with a consent decree, they had to up the standards of applications and of application or whatever. But as with every other city, you're gonna have issues with the police department. But with our police department, we have just a special level of babuic ignorance. I don't know how to say it nicely, but I mean, what else can you say? Uh, they tried what's called a residency requirement, where you have to live in New Orleans to work in New Orleans in public service, so to speak. So you'll notice a lot of NOPD cars parked all the way as far as Laplace, or even on the North Shore. And that was an argument of concern for most of the black citizens because you would have, I guess, so to speak, white people coming from Slidell who didn't know the neighborhood, who didn't know the people there, but they were there patrolling the neighborhoods and doing what they called the jump out boys. The jump out boys were the guys, I guess, who would be like on a special task force. They would jump out on you on basically stop and frisk. I've been a victim of the jump out boys when I was like 16, 19 years old. I've had my encounter with them, but it was just basically they frisk you around, see if they have drugs on you, you have nothing on you, they write your name and they let you go. And the NOPD is always hiring, but it's like a 6-month process just to get on. And I think by the time they graduate a class, it's like 26 officers. The city, I think, is probably 2,000 officers short. No, I'm sorry. Maybe 700 officers short now. So it's just one of the things that the city has to deal with because rebuilding after the hurricane, a lot of the city has come back. Another misconception I don't like is that people still think New Orleans is underwater. I get a lot of tourists who catch me and say, "Well, what's the Ninth Ward like?" The Ninth Ward, for the most part, is what it is, man. You know, it's just a lot of families couldn't come back or just didn't come back. They had the Road Home program, and it was a lot of programs that was just made up on the fly. So it was a program that was never ever, I guess, a product of best practices, so to speak, and you got what you got. Now, politically, this is the fun part. Here we go. We have political families in the city. I'll say it that way. I remember there was a guy who got arrested. I'm not gonna say his name, and I'll just say a Democrat, late 50s, probably early 60s. He had some money in his freezer, and the entire family was indicted. It was almost a monthly process or a monthly event where a guy named Jim Lett, he's retired now because there was misconduct in his office. Go figure. But Jim Lett had issues in his office. Some of his subordinates done some stuff that was like NOLA.com, for example. With New Orleans, okay, we have a big talk radio situation in New Orleans. And I remember with talk radio, one of my girlfriends from a long time ago turned me on to talk. I would listen just to music all the time. Once I got introduced to talk radio, you can actually hear what people in the city think because you can hear them call it in. And they'll say, well, I live in this area and I had a black guy walk in my neighborhood, or I live in this area and thank God we have this person in this district, and this district person, he got us a patrol to patrol the neighborhood. You know, just stuff like that. Real petty shit. So you would get like all these really weird political commercials that was just brutally petty. I'm talking like worse than Hillary, Donald Trump stuff. It was basically just a certain political family with a certain political family name that runs everything. These guys got people in the tax assessor's office, people in the clerk of court office, and when you run for office, it's always one of those people. You have to kiss the ring and get their approval, and their followers would go behind them and just do whatever they say. That's how New Orleans works. I mean, unfortunately, a guy who really wants to be a public servant and not a self-servant won't make it in the city. You have to have name recognition, even if it's stupid name recognition. That's that's an unfortunate side effect, of having these political families who have clout. They have political clout in the city. There was a whole group of guys named Bold, Bold. I forgot what Bold stood for, but it was like Bold and probably Push, some kind of weird name like that. But I remember the mayor Ray Nagin. When he ran for office, Ray Nagin ran against the former police chief of Montreal, and it was like, well, Ray Nagin is a Republican, a black Republican, so he's not one of us. He had good ideas, and when he did win, New Orleans was doing good. I remember when Ray Nagin ran for office. Ray Nagin left Cox Cable, and he left he had a big salary, but he cut his salary short to be a public servant, I guess. He bought us Hollywood South. He got us the Charlotte Hornets. He moved the Hornets to New Orleans, and you could just smell the progress coming. He had crime cameras for the first time, integrated crime cameras. We had he was trying to get like Wi-Fi for the city. Now the folks who received some of the Wi-Fi said the Wi-Fi was short, slow connection or what have you. But he had something called pothole busters, and it was one of those days where those political entities became his allies for his second run. Now that's where the racist part came in at, because then you had a lot of people who had to evacuate during the hurricane. You had those same people complaining that a lot of the white New Orleanians didn't want the black New Orleanians to come back. So you would have a series of phone calls on local talk radio saying, well, the city's nice and safe since the projects are completely empty. Stuff like that, basically. Because everybody know basically the city was a ghost town until a lot of the residents were able to come back. And the overall sentiment was that, well, New Orleans will be a better city as long as all the riffraff that evacuated don't come back. Then you have the infamous Chocolate City statement. Once he said it's going to be a chocolate city, it's the way that God wants it, it became basically a civil war and a race to get him indicted. At least that's how I see it. And of course, I mean, a lot of the white people, I guess they elected him. So I mean, why would they be offended if I had to hold my nose and just like put my my opinion out there? Now, so the weather is good. The weather in New Orleans, we have a good climate. The weather in New Orleans is almost identical to the weather in Florida. You can have a beautiful sunset at 7:30 in the morning, and by 1 o'clock it's as black as Wesley Snipes outside. It'll rain for like 30 hardcore minutes. Now, recently we had some flooding, but they working on it. That's the only bad thing about the city of New Orleans too. It floods really really easy. Or let me rephrase, it started flooding recently. Not as bad as Houston has been getting it, but they're working on that also. Now New Orleans got a big infrastructure issue where parking is babuic. It is the most awful experience in your life to find someone to park in the city of New Orleans. Now, the one thing New Orleans do good as a function of the city government, the people who live in New Orleans, all they want is what's best for the city. They want I guess, a safe place to raise their kids. They want a safe place to have a good time, barbecue, what have you. It just, leave a good legacy, I guess. But in a city like that where there's a very, very small economy and very little jobs to go around, the one thing the city can do really, really good is tow trucks. They can tow the hell out of a car. They can write you a ticket. They have this little machine, a little truck that rides around and put boots on cars. Now they have the advent of the infamous traffic ticket machines on the traffic lights. This is the best shit on earth. You can make a right turn. And let me touch on that right quick. That's one of my biggest pet peeves in New Orleans. A lot of stuff that don't make logical sense makes sense in New Orleans. Like no right turn on a red light. But you can get a ticket without the sign warning you that you'll get a ticket if you turn on a right turn. There's no sign that says photo enforcement warning. Do not make a right turn or you will get a ticket. And you magically get a $150 ticket in the mail. That's the city. And they just literally just raking everybody. Now, even to defend the ticket is going to cost you money. So you have a catch-22. Do I actually fight the ticket and pay a fee, a magical fee, where the city's going to make money because you're damned if you and you're damned if you don't? The reason, another thing about that city is that it's not a business-friendly city. I got a friend right now in, I think he's in Colorado Springs. He said that it cost him $25, or probably $125 maybe, to get a food truck permit. And you guaranteed a food truck permit. New Orleans, I think it's a $425 permit application fee, but you're not guaranteed to get the truck permit. It's just really weird, man. It's a hurtful thing because so much could be done. What's broken about New Orleans, unfortunately, is the one thing that folks like about it. So as a city that is dying for leadership, do you really want good leadership or you don't? Because I'm gonna tell you something. There was a guy that came by after the hurricane named Robert Sarasoli. He was the guy that actually invented the handbook on how to be an inspector general. Because the mayor who's in jail now, Ray Reagan, was like, well, you guys are saying that I'm stealing money. I'm going to get an inspector general. That way we can't blame nobody for wasteful spending. Whew. Robert Sarasoli did not last a year. Let me rephrase. I think he lasted slightly over a year. He gave up and left. The city, they fought the man tooth and nail. So you can't really say I want good government. It was best for the people, but you fight the guy that you hired to do to make the job to make it work. So that's one of those really weird things about the city of New Orleans. That's just like it's up in the air, man. It's one of those things where you have to like hold your nose and say, look here, what's best for the city is this, that, and the other, and it shouldn't matter if the person is a white person giving you good advice or if it's a black person giving you good advice. That's the really biggest issue that holds the city back is the black-white race issue. There was an unwritten rule a long time ago. I heard on a talk radio show. This guy was like, there was an unwritten law that there was a black police union and a white police union. There was also a white city council at large and a black city council at large. Now, also, you have the issue of New Orleans East. This is like the most heartbreaking part of the entire situation. After the hurricane, there was no working hospital for New Orleans East for at least 7 years. There was going to be a new. Now, Red Reagan, the mayor who's in jail now, he wanted to put the New Orleans International Airport in New Orleans East. That made logical sense to me as a forward thinker because of the interstate access to train tracks, access to freight as far as the Intercoastal Canal. It made logical sense. Plus, I think the lake is back there. It didn't work. There was also a situation where after the Chocolate City comment, Ray Nagin had a genius idea. The old Entergy building, or I think it was Entergy building on Poydras Avenue. Poydras, this building was maybe if you're driving, or if you're walking, it's probably 15 minutes, but 10 minutes of driving because of the traffic lights. Or maybe let's just say basically what was maybe 5 blocks from City Hall right now. Entergy wanted to sell the city of New Orleans a building. It wasn't a blighted building. The building had a built-in parking garage, and they was gonna take the old City Hall. You ought to see this building, the old City Hall, and tear it down and relocate to. I think the building had 41 floors in it, but I think they wanted maybe 40 million or $20 million to move in, and all the city would have to do is take all some of the old furniture from the City Hall that exists right now, move it to the new location, tear the old City Hall down, which sits literally, well, I'm sorry, the current City Hall that sits right by the Superdome, and make that an exterior like jazz amphitheater or something. But that idea became Champion Square now. So it's really weird because a lot of good ideas that work that would be beneficial for the city of New Orleans or the city of New Orleans East. I mean, I'm sorry, for New Orleans East is always shot down because of political partisanship, I guess. There was a guy who wanted to put a NASCAR racetrack all the way in New Orleans East. It would be right in between. New Orleans East, the part of New Orleans East where the racetrack would be at, runs with the interstate between Slidell and New Orleans. Big undeveloped area. Other than like a NASA space station back there, that stretch of I-10 is unutilized, and it never got off the ground. So it's tiny things like that hold New Orleans back. The people that live here, they want what's best for New Orleans, but unfortunately, what I hear is that what's broken about New Orleans is unfortunately what folks like about New Orleans. So it's like it's good to come here if you want to retire, but to come here and expect what you had somewhere else won't work here. Yeah, that's just it's a hard pill to swallow. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts and opinions. But I don't know if you got anything else to add. I'll be touching on other issues in the second video. I'm not gonna be talking all night. What else? I didn't touch on. Let me see, the Plaza Mall, Six Flags, Artie Filco, Robert Sarasoli. I didn't touch on the other indictments, but I'll do that in another video. Anyway, till next time, take care of yourself, guys.